I call the member for Holt.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and I rise obviously to speak on the Appropriations Bill, or Bills 2015-2016, and to talk in general about the challenges that we confront as a community, a local community, my electorate and as a country. Deputy Speaker, I'm an optimist when it comes to our country's future. And I actually believe that our country's future, our best days are yet to come. They lie ahead of us. But we all acknowledge in this place that our country faces some economic and security challenges that we must address. We now live in a globally interconnected world that is not only changing the way we do business and forcing nations to adapt their economies to the 21st century, but also seeing a growing world of disorder developing, as evidenced by the growing terrorist threat posed by the Islamic State and other geopolitical challenges, such as the issue that we're dealing with in China's activities in the South China Sea. So we are sort of dealing with a world of disorder. Our nation, Deputy Speaker, can't get left behind economically, because we're looking at nations like Germany, Japan, South Korea and the United States innovate and manufacture the goods of the 21st century. Our nation also can't afford to neglect the global threats of terrorism, geopolitical challenges and terrorism threats, as I've said, and the likely growing, what we can see, the growing world of disorder. Australians are looking for leadership, political leadership, to address these great economic, geopolitical and national security challenges. Australians are looking for security. They want to know that we collectively in this parliament are working to keep the country safe. Australians are also looking for new opportunities to prosper and to continue to plan their futures with some sense of certainty in the 21st century. Deputy Speaker, in my electorate of Holt in the southeastern suburbs of Melbourne, my community is very focused on our jobs in providing the necessary security and opportunities for people in our constituencies. They want to be kept safe as a starting point. They want to know that there is some degree of economic certainty so that they can have some planning for the jobs of the future. And they want the necessary, because they pay their taxes, social infrastructure to succeed in this 21st century. They want the guarantees of greater opportunities and security for their children as well. I want to touch on something that really is a primary responsibility of government and an issue that I'm completely and unequivocally committed to, and that is national security. We can't have a debate in this place, regardless of what side of the fence that we sit on, without being unambiguously committed on both sides of this place to keeping our community and our country safe. And as people know, I'm the Deputy Chair of the Intelligence and Security Committee, and I work, and Labor works, particularly through the leadership of Bill Shorten, hand in hand with the federal government to keep our community safe. Now, you might ask, Deputy Speaker, why I raised this. Because our electorate has been profoundly affected by terrorism events in my constituency. There was an event on the 23rd of September 2014 where an attack was conducted by an assailant on two police officers. They were stabbed and then the assailant was shot. The intent of that particular activity by the assailant was to kill the police officers and, if successful, to proceed to kill others in the police station. The activity was Islamic State inspired. The associates of that particular assailant have then been subsequently charged in what is known as the Anzac Day arrests. And I was privy to information concerning those particular activities of those individuals and remain so as in my role as Deputy Chair of the Committee, and also working with the very brave police officers that service and protect our community, both AFP and VicPol, and our intelligence agencies. But what transpired in the discourse in the media, Deputy Speaker, with respect to these matters was a criticism, an implied criticism of the police officers, even the police officers on the night of the event, and the government's handling of national security. And I just want to make it absolutely and unequivocally clear to those that may have read that media report that the media reporting was irresponsible, did not take into account the real events of what transpired in that evening, and not in the national interest. I also want those police officers, AFP and VicPol, and our security agencies to know that I support them, our community supports them, our government supports them, the opposition supports them, led by Bill Shorten, 100%. That support is not equivocal support, it is unequivocal support for the job that our security agencies, our Victorian Police and our AFP do. There isn't any greater challenge for a government, or for an opposition for that matter, to ensure that we keep our community safe. And what I was quite surprised about in reading the media reportage was the cavalier way that the lives of those that were involved in that incident were dragged, if you want, through the print press in a very inappropriate way. And to some extent, Deputy Speaker, that leads me to believe, in reality, in reporting of these events, and even to some extent in terms of the broad discussion, and it sort of ties into what I observed during the Lindt Cafe siege, to some extent, what role does the media play? And in my discussions, which I'll touch on a bit further on, with leaders of the Islamic community who are working hand in hand with us in my constituency to deal with this threat, and with the AFP officers, the intelligence agencies and the officers of the Victorian Police, the question we have is, where is the media's responsibility in terms of reporting this? And I would put to you, Deputy Speaker, to this chamber and to this House, and I did put this to a meeting that I convened in my constituency on the 30th of April, and I'd like to thank the Australian Government for this and the offices of the Attorney-Generals. And I'd like to thank the Prime Minister's office as well for facilitating this meeting, and the Office of the Attorney-General, George Brandis, where there was a meeting that I convened that was a summit between the officers from Victoria Police, the AFP, members of the Attorney-General's Department and our local Muslim community leaders. And we collectively sat together to work out how we could deal with this challenge. Collectively, I'd like to point out. And of course these matters were not reported because they were not raised, because the challenge that we have in dealing with this issue is how do we get appropriate reporting because of the very intense and understandable sensitivities. But it occurs to me in a discussion in terms of how Muslim community leaders are portrayed, and my direct first-hand experience of the inappropriate reporting of our police officers and their activities and what occurred on that particular night, and what I observed in the Lindt Cafe siege, there must, in my mind, and I would ask the government, and I'll be putting this forward, I would put forward that the media needs to have a code of conduct. What I observed, in particular, Deputy Speaker, as an example, on the Lindt Cafe siege, was I was actually watching with someone that has experience in terms of counter-terrorism operations in discussions about tactical responses. The media was actively filming counter-terrorism officers in strategic positions that, had the perpetrator seen that, would have taken some form of action. And that's not just me seeing this. This is direct feedback that I have received about the feelings of officers on the ground and the actual their lives being put in danger by the media coverage. They were televising a tactical operation being conducted. And I might point out, Deputy Speaker, what deeply concerned me was in the first 60 minutes of that particular event being conducted, there was a live feed being taken directly across. Now, I won't discuss in graphic detail what could have happened in those 60 minutes, but I would say to this chamber, imagine terrorist or more than one terrorist having that opportunity to make a point that would have profoundly impacted on the psychology of the Australian community, and why, I would ask, was that feed allowed to occur? And I make no criticism of the TV channel that broadcast it, but I would respectfully submit that that should not have allowed to occur. And what was occurring as I was watching that live feed and subsequent media reportage, visual reportage of the tactical operation that was being conducted by our brave officers, was that other people from overseas organisations contacted me asking what was going on. Why was this footage allowed to be shown live and tactically? And I can say quite strongly to you now, Madam Deputy Speaker, that in my mind had an impact on what occurred on that day. And I not seek to blame the media for that, but it's the responsibility of legislators when they see a difficulty to ask that measures be taken to protect the people that we had deployed on the ground, the Special Operations Group, New South Wales Police and others that were there. And I will be putting forward through the committee and through discussions with others the fact that we do need a code of conduct in terms of how the media reports and where they are situated and what media can be sent. Because unfortunately, Madam Deputy Speaker, those that want to do us further harm studied that footage very, very, very carefully and learnt a lot in terms of how we might respond to a terrorist event. And again, I don't blame the media, but it is not in our interest to continue to portray or show events of that type. And I, as I said, respectfully put forward that we need to deal with that. And a reportage of individuals. What was put to me in this meeting, and I want to emphasise, it was a collective gathering of Victorian Police, AFP and members of the Attorney General's Department and, very importantly, our local Muslim community leaders, is in some ways the way they're portrayed as well. And there was agreement across the board with everyone that the media had to be very careful about the way they even reported. There were pictures of a young man, for example, that were shown. Now, he was not charged. And I thought we had a concept in this country of innocent until proven guilty. So what was the picture of that young man doing there? Did that, do you think, in our ongoing efforts, law enforcement, security agencies, working collaboratively with the agencies, did that help our endeavours? No, it didn't. And so again, it raises the point, how do we deal with this? This is words are bullets. In the space where we're trying to engage local Islamic communities, Muslim communities, when we're trying to deal and support our brave men and women that work to keep us safe in our security services, these things can damage our coordinated efforts in dealing with this particular issue. And so again, I seek not to limit press freedom, but the press have to have a responsibility. There must be some responsibility for appropriate and considered reporting of events, because it's our country collectively that is dealing with this threat. We did not ask for this threat to visit our shores, but we can deal with this threat, and how we deal with it is collectively. And I believe the solution is with our community coming together. Australians are the best in the world with dealing with, I would say that as an Australian, wouldn't I, as an Australian politician, in dealing with crises, bushfires, floods, things that happen overseas. Australians, there is a spirit that runs through the soul of this country which is unique in all of the world. We come together collectively to deal, and for the common good, to deal with these issues. And I believe we will do the same thing again with this particular threat. But we need everyone involved in that process. We don't need people to be sitting on the sidelines making inappropriate comments about communities or our law enforcement agencies or our agencies. Madam Deputy Speaker, words are bullets. And so I give a commitment to all of those that were there at that summit that I will continue to push for us to solve this dilemma collectively, because we will face future challenges, there's no doubt about that. but we can come together for the common good. We can solve this problem collectively, and I'll do everything within my power to support the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition to ensure that that happens. Thank you.
Thank you,
Deputy
Member
Speaker.
for Holt.